my name is Lauren Hollis from NOI Education Services, and today I am lucky enough to be here with Tamara Simon. Tamara is a seasoned professional with over 25 years experience supporting small businesses, owners and CEOs and their teams in building and growing profitable businesses. Known affectionately as Australia's small business answer to Bob the Builder, Tamara focuses on simplifying operations, increasing customer engagement, and fostering team clarity and productivity. And we don't often talk a lot about some of the business side of challenges, so I think this is a great opportunity for RTO owners that are watching to really think about some of the challenges and complexities of small business. So thank you very much for joining us here today, Tamara.
My absolute pleasure.
So you are really heavily focused on like your website and a lot of your posts, and I know you've got an upcoming workshop all in and around kind of thinking about the challenges that small businesses face. I think probably the vast majority of RTOs, we've got around about 4,000 registered. I would probably put a good 3,500 of those in that small business category. So I'm interested to know, like, what are some of the challenges that like all small businesses face that you see RTOs who maybe are kind of so focused on meeting RTO compliance are not thinking about some of those small business challenges? Like, what are the things that you see out there in industry, and how do you help businesses tackle them?
Yeah, look, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you. I'm thrilled to be here. For those of you in your audience who don't know me and may be wondering, where does she appear from? So just letting everyone know, like, I've had 25 plus years in the vet sector, having both run RTOs, worked in them, now obviously work with them, but also I used to be in the old ITAB environment, so the industry training advisory bodies, which are sort of skills councils now. So I've been on all sides of the fence as part of that. And I suppose that's where what we see within the sector is that there's so much focus on compliance. And yes, I get that, but too many owners and their staff are so driven by that you're exactly right. They're actually not looking at the business, and business is business. I don't care if you run a not-for-profit, even if you're in a TAFE, you've got small businesses within businesses and those type of things. So I think the challenges facing any small business are exactly the same for the RTOs. So if we look at the moment, if you ask small business owners what's their biggest challenge, at the moment, it's dealing with cost of living increases, right? And just trying to work out what we do next. But the biggest thing is we can't get staff. And I'm certainly talking to RTOs about that, right? So we've got massive skill shortages, particularly in specialised RTO areas. So trainers are really hard to come by, which is challenging, particularly for many owners that, you know, got trainers in, but as a result, you know, if the business has contracted or has grown, they've now got to go back on the tools and go back into training, which of course, you know, then has a knock-on effect with their businesses. So I think from RTOs, I always look at, there's 5 areas that I call the building blocks of what I deem a really profitable small business, because that's what I'm about. Your business needs to be simple, needs to be profitable, and it needs to be one you actually love. And unfortunately, they turn into a nightmare really quickly. So the reason I'm talking about bricks is because I wrote 2 business books. The first is called The 5 Little Business Pigs, and that uses the analogy of the 3 little pigs, because that's how we build our businesses, from straw to stick to brick. But there's 2 others. There's the Reno and the Rundown. And then I thought, yeah, why not write another book? So I then, well, that was at the editor, went through and customized it, and actually then wrote The 5 Little RTO Pigs just for the sector. So to me, there's those 5 foundation bricks that we need to be looking at whilst, you know, in the midst of all compliance and getting students in and all that sort of stuff. So the first is really about embracing your role. So for a lot of small businesses, and particularly for RTOs, they're run by generally trainers, right? Who goes, yep, I want to do this. And so therefore they're what we call the technician. So just like me, just like you, really good at something. And as a result, that's what our business sort of becomes. But when we're running an RTO, we need to make sure that we've embraced that role of CEO and owner. And that means looking at all the other functions within the business. So sales and marketing and building systems and managing staff and all those other things, as well as trying to keep enrollments through the door, maintaining compliance, etc. So, you know, we've got to maybe get some skills, because a lot of RTOs, as I'm sure you've probably seen as well, Lauren, you know, they haven't maybe managed a team before, you know, and all of a sudden now we've got staff. And so there's a whole lot of leadership, you know, challenges around that. The second is about focusing your time. So we've all got the same amount of time. It's how we use it, right? And, you know, everyone can say, yeah, I'm really busy and all of that. But unless we actually stop, of which generally I then get, I don't have time to stop tomorrow. And then I'll go, well, how's that working for you? The Dr. Phil response, because it's not, right? We have to stop to really look at how we're spending our day. And for most people, as soon as they get to work, whether it's, you know, working from home like I do in a workplace, they turn on the computer and email drives their day. So they shouldn't be doing that. The first thing is don't be doing that, right? So we've got to look at focusing our time so that we can actually ensure that we are getting on our money train every single day. You know, bringing in business, not just when it's busy, and looking after all those other aspects across the business, right? So
those two things combined, like that first and second point, are so close, because I know that one of the things, I mean, I personally struggled with it at the beginning of running a business as well, but like going, I can do X 5 times quicker than if I brought somebody on and trained them up how to do it. So I'm like 1, X is going to get done 3 times slower. 2, I actually still have to spend the time to train up X person. And it was like, what is that time frame that's associated with it? Like long term, yes, it's going to save me, but I think so many small businesses owners, especially like when you got the early days, you know, time crunch, finance crunch, it feels like such a hard sacrifice to make of like, no, I am going to delegate, I am going to train, but like cheese and crackers, like it's like pulling a knife out of, I think a lot, it was like, that's how it was, it still is for me at times. It's so hard to kind of go, I'm going to make this short-term sacrifice for this long-term gain.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's the short-term pain, long-term gain, right? Because systems are the foundation of your business. We all know we need them. We all get why they're important, but we don't actually then invest the time because, oh, we're too busy. And go, yeah, so that means that by default, you'll never get help because you're constantly all in your head and all that sort of stuff. And it means that the business won't grow either to the level that you want or anything around that. So, you know, it is understanding that that is the key. And it's the hardest thing because that's the pushback I get. I don't have time tomorrow. I go, yeah, okay, so let's just keep talking and all this sort of stuff. But the systems are where the problems are, right? So Deming said that, you know, 95% of our problems are not in the people, but they're in our systems. We blame the people. They don't know how to do it. They're taking too long. Or yeah, we haven't built them up for success. So that makes it a little bit tricky, you know, within that.
Like whether we're the RTO owner or the small business owner, I think what we know in our heads, so often we forget what we don't know or like what we didn't know back then. And so we give staff like snippets of information, but it's actually not enough for them to go and do what they need to do. And I know so often for me, I have to kind of go, I've asked them to do this. Like they probably have, like they haven't had the conversations I've had with the client. They don't have the year's experience at the audit. They weren't at that audit the other day. So they don't know that like I'm going to be focused and picky on that particular point. And I mean, AI has been fantastic for that because now my staff have got access to like all my meetings and everything that I say, and they get a summary of every meeting that I'm a part of. But I think learning how to communicate when you're super busy, learning to actually communicate a whole thing is like, again, it can be really challenging for employers and people who are really experienced and are used to running their own businesses and just like doing their own thing and having all of that information just living in their heads. Moving into that other headset of like, I actually have to give them the background and the X and the Y before they actually can even start to do the thing for you.
Yeah, look, absolutely. You know, and one of the things that I say to people is everyone's got a phone now, right? So let's speed things up. So just press record on your phone, and whether that's you go, "Blah," right? And then you send that recording to your staff member, or they're just in a meeting, right? Because so often owners will say to me, "Oh, but I told them tomorrow." And I go, "Yeah, how's good's your memory?" Like, so that's where we're at. So, and everything can be lost in communication. So the simplest way, even just to get started, is just tap record on your phone while you're having a meeting or doing a brain dump as you do your walk or whatever it is, because it's quicker than writing it for starters. And secondly, they've at least got something that they can extract. You could run it through Otter or other things just to get the transcript. There's plenty of that stuff now, but it doesn't have to be as hard as what we sort of think as part of that. But you're exactly right. It's this push-pull, but the reality is until we do that, we have to understand that we're not getting the best value out of ourselves, and therefore it will result in staff issues regardless as part of that. But yeah, I'm always talking to owners initially about how they view their role and their leadership, and then looking at their time, because the next 3 bricks are essential, but they won't change until we address that first. Because if they're so in their habits, we've got to break that and find some different time to enable them to get to the other bricks within that.
Yeah.
So then those other 3 bricks, and again, everything all interrelates, right? So the other 3 bricks are around guiding your people, and I'll talk about the language within that, designing your systems, and building your business, right? And I'm very deliberate in that word guide your people versus lead versus manage, because I personally believe that every business owner, including RTO owners, should be a coach, right? I love my sport, but it's a great philosophy, because as a coach, our job is to provide strategy and the detail and the skills to bring that team together. Our job is to work with making sure we build our dream team and provide them with the vision. And so, but that's not very dictatorial, right? That's not about managing, that's about guiding.
Yeah.
And really.
So I think obviously like leading and managing, there's so many memes out there. The difference between like leading and managing. You said that there's a difference between guiding and leading. So I'm interested to kind of get into like a little bit more detail as to what you mean by like, what is that difference between guiding and leading?
I think, again, as you said, there's different definitions, and people might go, well, I'm a leader and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I talk about it in the book that I believe everyone is a leader. All that changes is delegation. Right? And that can sometimes be an empowering thing, particularly for admin staff, because they are all leaders in their own ways, in their own skill set. But I suppose where I look at leadership and guidance instead is, are you willing to take people on a journey as part of that? Are you willing to provide support to people? Because most owners, when I say, well, what's your biggest problem? Oh, staff, I'm spending all my time with staff tomorrow. And I go, do you not get that as soon as you've employed someone, whether that's outsourcing or whatever it is, that's 50% of your job right now? Like, that's it. Right?
It's
but
the
most
irony
people think,
of working in a training industry where like people are so dead set against like the amount of times I'm like, registered training organization. Like every BD conversation you have is about the value of training in your organization, and yet
oh, look, exactly. It's one of my big points is that RTOs, you're exactly right, profess that training is the best thing, and yet in organizations that I've certainly audited years back and work with now, rare to find a staff handbook, rare to find induction that actually matters beyond, here's your desk and here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. and rare to find, unless it's for their trainers where they have to do training in order to meet compliance. There's not professional development because, oh no, there's no budget, there's no time, all of that. I did a survey years ago and found that, right? So this sector should be doing it better than anyone because of the mantra, but it's sort of like, yeah, we believe in training for everyone else.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not for our staff, And it's interesting that I was talking with a HR consultant the other day because of new legislation changes that are coming into effect, 26th of August, the right to disconnect, there's all that sort of stuff, right? And I said, what's one of the things that you're talking with your business owners about? And she said, the difference between that staff actually don't want training, what they want is learning, right? And because we're in this environment now of the Great Resignation, it's an employees marketplace, right? COVID changed all different things around working from home and all of that, right? So surely it's more important to actually, when we can't get staff, to keep our staff. But what they're looking for a lot of times is not necessarily a course, but they're looking for ways to learn. They're looking for ways to grow, whether that's mentoring, coaching, doing a swap over of someone else's role, being challenged. Now, if we don't have those conversations with our staff, how are we going to know?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting language change of, it doesn't always have to be a course, and there's value in that, absolutely.
Yes.
But let's look at what people are actually looking for so that you retain your staff that are the right cultural fit, have got the right skill set for your business.
Yeah. It's my business partner. It's probably I reckon she's one of the best RTO operators in Australia. But we're constant, like, we'll get on the phone in an evening and I would have identified something and I'll be like, like, why aren't we doing this? And she was like, stop. She like her first response is always stop. Where's the policy? Where's the process? When's the last time we did staff training on this? Like before we even start to look at them, she immediately goes to like, what have we followed X, Y, and Z? And she's probably one of the only people that does it like that. She is religious, and like the moment I'll be like, she'll be like, stop. 1, 2, like, right. And it's one of the reasons it's probably one of the things that makes her the best, like one of the best operators. And it's why she's brilliant at like building teams and developing these really close-knit, loyal teams. But it stands out to me because I'm like, the amount of people that would look at a problem, have a gripe with staff, and before anything go to, hold on, what have we done? What if, like, do we have an actual policy? Do we have a process? Is it clear what we expect? Have we actually provided them with an opportunity for, like, this is the first thing that she goes to. It's a very rare approach, I would argue. But, like, I can't argue with it because I'm like, you're right. It's the right way to go about it.
Exactly.
It's not common.
Foundations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's definitely not common. Yeah. And that's where it's about what happens is we blame, ask, etc. the staff, but we have to come back and go, have I given them the tools for success? Which is often my question. So what training have you given? What support have you given? What have you documented? Do they know their role? Because staff crave clarity. Once you've got clarity and they know what they can and can't do, boy, oh boy, do they go. But there's all these assumptions, and it's just with the best of intentions that this stuff happens. It's not done of we all of that sort of stuff, but with the best of intentions, the team issues are because those foundations are not there, and we just react, band-aid, and then all of a sudden going, how do we even end up here? Which is why so many RTOs businesses, like, they're so complicated and they don't need to be, but it's been band-aid, react to compliance changes versus actually looking, going, so for what purpose? You know, who's this for? What do we need to change? Does it work? Does it not? Etc.
I think so. It's like often they're so focused on that. Like I'll go in and do not an RTO and I'll pull something up and I'll be like, guys, GST, resources, GST applicable, this GST not applicable. I'm like, and they look at me as if to go, huh? And I'm like, oh, this is not great for GST and BAS and
Yeah. The spider's
like,
web of
standard is that? I'm like, it's an ATO standard, guys. Like,
right.
In my fear of regulatory organizations, it's like, it's ASQA, state funding bodies, ATO, they're up there. And so often things like, work cover, insurance, GST, HR, having a basic contract, having, a WHS process and things like that. I was talking to one the other day and they were like, oh, but all of our staff work from home. I'm like, your point?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're still responsible for WHS, but they're at home. I get that.
Yeah.
But they're doing a job for you and you have to make sure that they have the tools, the resources to do that in a safe way. I'm like, you need to have a working from home check. You need to have rules in and around, what their work setup needs to be like, and they were like, I said, what happens if they fall off the back of their dodgy chair and hit their head on the corner of the thing? And they were like, I don't know. I'm like, I do. I'm like, you're the one who falls in trouble. They're like, no, because it's their house. I'm like, no, it's their workspace.
Correct.
So many of those things. I think RTOs are like RTO compliance, and they don't actually even like it just doesn't even hit their periphery a lot of the time.
No. And I've always believed, to me, compliance should just be integrated into how you run your business. And this is the switch, right? You've got to take off the compliance hat driving everything you do and put a business hat on to actually run that and have it loop in. And, that I've said that for years in presentations, Lauren, and people go, oh my God, you can't say that. Of course you can, because you're running a business. It's just that business is a training business that's got some rules around it, right? But that's what it comes down to.
And just because you're an RTO doesn't mean that your business is immune from being shut down because you didn't pay your employees superannuation, or because, you decided not to pay your tax debt for long enough that they've now decided, oh, well, guess what? We're not going to give you a payment. But like all of those things, which are so important for small, like that's often what kills small businesses. It's ASQA doesn't often shut down a lot of RTOs, but the number of the number of small businesses that shut down every year because they weren't financially viable or they didn't pay their taxes or they didn't pay their superannuation, that number's through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. And if like my mantra is always, you've got to build a simple, profitable business you actually love, because otherwise you might as well go get a job, right? Because why would you go through all the heartache and all that we do, right? But I don't care if that profit's $1. If you run a business, and even if you're in a not-for-profit, because I've had this conversation, right, is you still have to have enough money to run the business expenses and things like that. And I've seen too many RTOs that are running courses that are not profitable, but everyone loves it, Tamara, and our trainers love delivering it. And I said, so do you know your viable number for how many is break even? Is it 2? Is it 10? Is it, oh, we don't know. Well, how many do you normally get? Oh, a couple. Oh my gosh, right? So you can have swings and roundabouts if you've got that big profit maker that can justify and offset, but they don't know how much a course costs. They don't know how much it costs to run the business. All of that is built into
stage one of developing your TAS. Stage one of developing your TAS is it viable? How do we develop it to run it viably? If we can run it viably and compliantly and deliver a quality product, wicked. But like step one, is it viable?
Yeah. Well, I'd actually say that even before that, I would love to see them actually have a market who's actually going to pay for that. Because I'm sure you've had the conversations like me, Lauren. I remember years ago an RTO said to me, I've been running this wonderful diploma course in business And I said, oh, yeah, rightio. And I'm about to launch it. Okay, so have you got a wait list for it? Oh, no. Okay, so have you got a community that you've been talking to about this? No. Where are you going to get the students from? Oh, well, I'll just advertise it. I said, okay, there's two things with this. One, Field of Dreams, build it and they will come is not a viable business strategy, right? We've all been sold a chip on that, right? It doesn't work like that. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second thing is that you can have the best product in the world, but if no one buys it, it won't matter. So you have to have gone back and you have to ensure that you know who your customer is, who will pay to do that, right? And then the third thing I actually said to this person is, you have to understand that I'm in business. I don't need a Cert 4 in small business to run a small business, right? So you've got to understand that as well. It doesn't mean I don't invest in professional development because I have a coach. I'm in programs. I'm part of mastermind groups and all that. So I'm getting my business now from a whole range of people, and I'm investing in training and development, but it's not a course. So you have to understand that as well.
Realistically, like for that particular cohort of like business owners, a full course is just not going to be, it's just probably not going to be a real thing. A unit of competency, a couple of units,
Maybe.
where you're selling it focused on the training component as opposed to like on here, come do this unit of competency, like rather here, let's talk about the latest social media strategies. Let's talk about, you know, how you're actually developing your marketing plan. Let's talk about how you're building, you know, processes for your staff, like focus on the content, and then the, you know, the background is then the assessment and the issuance of the unit or something like that that goes along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I built RTO Grow, which is my program to help RTOs run the business, it was built by asking all the questions about what people wanted. And I got enough support initially that I then built it from. I didn't build it straight away. I built it as a concept. So it's thinking a bit differently with businesses of you don't have to build the Ferrari first. You've got to build the concept. You've got to get enough people interested to buy at the price that you want, and then you can build. And you can always be one, you know, module or webinar ahead, but we've got to think like that, because otherwise there's so much wasted time and energy and money on, I think this is what the customer wants, but if they don't buy, my goodness. And we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Put my hand up, right?
Yeah.
So it's thinking differently around that. And I think that's probably one of the challenges for RTOs, is to think differently in this space. You know, who wants accredited training, who doesn't? There's you know, there's power in both. But yeah. Got to think like.
So I think that brings us brilliantly onto our second point. And for that, guys, you're going to have to come back and check in with us next week. You can, however, find all of Tamara's details down below. Links to her website, her LinkedIn profile, and her upcoming webinars and things like that. If you disagree with anything you've said, feel free to duke it out, but do so respectfully. All right, guys, forward to seeing you again in another week. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. My name is Lauren Hollows for Anawaya Education Services.